Hey everyone, so I'm going to go over I can't really do a tutorial because I made them all, but just a video demonstration of how to make these plutonium canisters from, it's a Back to the Future prop. Um, they look really good. They're not the highest quality, but yeah, they're a pretty good replica prop for your price range. So if you're looking to make something like if you want to make 12 of them, then this is the way to do it, and you don't want to have to spend hundreds of bucks on it. So what I ended up doing was I went on Amazon, and the hardest part was probably finding the right size tubes for everything that I needed, and how I was going to do it, like how I was going to make 12 at an affordable price. Because what happened was I ended up making a Nike footwear bag, and I traded that for the plutonium case, which is a flight case. And so I was just expecting the case to come like as an empty box, but the guy was nice enough to include some foam with cutouts for plutonium canisters. So I was like, oh cool, well this is going to be awesome, because now I can make all these plutonium canisters to go in like into where the foam cutout was, right? Because I was just expecting to fill the case with like collectibles or whatever. But yeah, so that foam was in there, which was an added bonus. But I needed the challenge of how to make these. And there's some for sale, but they're like $100 each, so you don't want to end up having to buy 12 of those. There might be a little less than that, but who knows, right? So what I ended up doing was I went on Amazon and I bought an acrylic tube. So I'll include some links in the description. But they were 12-inch acrylic tubes, hollow on both ends. And so I ended up buying 6 of those so that I could cut them in half at 6 inches to get 12, right? So what I ended up doing, in order to cut them in half, all you do is you just kind of stack some stuff. That's about 12 inches high, right? Grab a marker, let's see. Or sorry, 6 inches high, right? So pretend that this is a Sharpie marker. And then, so it would need to be a little bit higher than this. Let's see. I can't find something else to raise up that height a little bit. So if I were to use a Sharpie marker like that, and imagine this is 12 inches right now. So I would just go around like this. And that would give me a straight line at 6 inches, okay? So then I'd take a hacksaw, and I found that just using a handsaw or a hacksaw was easy enough to cut through the acrylic. And then you just follow that line, make sure it's nice and fairly straight. And so that's the first step. And then you get your tubes cut. So that would be, you'd end up with 2 6-inch hollow tubes. And then your secret weapon is going to be Pringle lids. Okay? So ask your friends and family and neighbors to save a bunch of Pringle lids. Because that's the perfect size to fit over these tubes. just like that, okay? And so I just guessed at the hole here. It needed to be a little bit off center, so it should have been maybe a little closer to the edge, but I wasn't too picky about it. So what I did was I drew a little hole. This is the medium-sized test tube, so these are two different test tubes that I bought from Amazon. Again, I'll include some links. So this would be your plutonium rod when you're done with it. It was the exact size that you needed, so you don't have to cut that at all. And somebody on Etsy makes these labels, so I'll include a link for that as well. And so yeah, so that's your tube size. It also came with a little cap, just like that. I wasn't sure if, like, how to get this red color here, because I didn't necessarily want the cap, because the movie prop doesn't have a cap on it. Like, it doesn't have a cap on the top or on the bottom or anything. But it doesn't look that bad once it's on the bottom. But I was trying to figure out how to get this color, because what you could do is just keep the cap and fill it with some food coloring or something, right? But yeah, I wasn't sure what to do in order to get that color. So I ended up buying some window film. Okay, this is adhesive, so there's a backing on it which peels off, and then there's a clear film on the front, so don't forget to peel off that clear film. And then what you're left with is like a red adhesive film that you can wrap around this tube, okay? So that would be, you'd wrap around about 6 inches. This is about 7 inches tall. And then that would give you your clear top. Okay, and then the label will hide, like if it doesn't end up straight or something, that's fine because the label will hide it. So you want to make sure you get it nice and straight on the bottom. And then if the top doesn't quite match up or whatever, that's okay, because the label hides everything. So everything all together, the window film, these tubes, these tubes, these tubes, it was all like fairly reasonably priced. So yeah, if you're gonna make 12, then it gets a little bit costly, but even still, it was pretty affordable. So yeah, going back to the Pringle lids, what you're gonna do is take one of these, like the lid from that, trace it with like a fine point Sharpie marker onto there, and then just use some scissors to cut that out. Okay, and then you're going to put these end for end like that, trace the other one, and then put those over your hollow tubes. These aren't going to be exact because that's not the one that I used for this particular tube, but it's close enough. So once they go on there, what you're going to do is end up using some hot glue. Just run some hot glue all along this inside edge. Okay, and then stick that on here. And then you're going to want to draw a line to make sure that it's straight to match up with the other end. So you can see a little bit of a line right there. Maybe it's a little out of focus, but there used to be a Sharpie marker line right there. Okay, so then that way your inner tube, I know it's not an inner tube, but this tube here on the inside is going to line up nice and straight, or fairly straight anyways. So those will be glued on with hot glue, okay? And then, let's see if I can get both of those on there again. All right. So imagine those are glued on, and then you're going to want to cut this. Again, I ended up using a hacksaw. This is strong enough for what you need, but it's pretty flimsy and easy to cut through with just a hacksaw. So I just went fairly close to the top here, just past the threads. Okay, oops, take that off. So just past the threads there, I cut right along here. You can just eyeball it. I wouldn't bother marking it or anything. And then cut the end off. Okay, and you're going to end up with a little more than 6 inches once you cut here and here. So then, that's going to fit through your holes. Where'd the other lid go? Oh, there it is. It's going to fit like that, okay? And you got the tube on the inside. So this will be glued onto your 6 inch by 3 inch tube. And then you're going to want to glue all around this edge, being careful that you don't get any pockets or areas where there isn't any glue. Okay, and then should end up with something like this at the time. So you're gonna have glue. You're gonna have this tube coming through here on both ends. Glue holding these Pringle lids on, and glue holding this inner tube inside on both edges. Okay. And then once you do that, and these are fastened on nice, what I ended up doing was using a very small drill bit and just drilled a few holes here, 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 here. Just kind of eyeball it all the way around, okay? So I ended up with about 7 or 8 holes. And you can still see those little marks. How do you like my mustache? That's for Movember. So I got, I don't know if you can see them, to be honest. Oh, here we go. There's one right there. There. And there. I can feel them actually. There's one there. And there. Okay, so that's going to lock this in place. And this is actually resin. Okay. That's a clear Art Resin. So these Pringle lids are your mold. So they're glued on. You've got holes, which are registration marks to lock in your resin, okay? So I guess what you want to do is keep one end open. So you don't want to glue the other Pringle lid on yet. So it's just going to be one end open here. This one's glued on, okay? So forget about gluing both ends. And then you're going to use some, not that box, it's a very similar box. This stuff here. it's still sticky. Alright, so this is an 8-ounce Art Resin. Okay, I'll try to get the camera to focus on that. And it doesn't seem to want to focus. There we go, sort of. So that's this Art Resin, 8 ounces, and as you can see, it was just enough. I can maybe do a couple more if I wanted to, but I don't have the supplies to do a couple more. But I had very little left after using all that for 12 canisters, right? So imagine this lid is glued on, you got your holes, and then you're going to take some duct tape and go around the edge just like that. So if there is any spillage of the Art Resin, then hopefully it won't wreck your workbench or anything. So you're going to want to put down some just like newspaper or what do you call it? Parchment paper, because nothing sticks to parchment paper. So put that down underneath your working area. You'll probably want some gloves on. And then I would recommend soaking the Art Resin bottles in some hot water and let it soak for about 10 minutes or whatever. And what that's going to do is it's going to help you, or help reduce the amount of air bubbles that you end up with afterwards. Because if you compare this one to, this is probably the first one that I made. Look at all those air bubbles, right? So, trial and error. So I learned what to do and what not to do after making this one. So you've got your lid on here, you've got the duct tape around there, and you take an unused Pringle lid, fill that with some water, okay, and then pour that into a glass or test tube or something, because you got plenty of test tubes. And then, so you pour that in there, and then that's going to tell you how much resin you need for one bottom, okay? So you would have to pour your water into here and then divide that in half. So that would be, because you got to mix your resin in 2 parts, okay? So there's going to be a part A and a part B. And then once you mix that, and that would give you that much resin, okay? Just the right amount. So you got all that in there. You're gonna get something like a popsicle stick or something to mix your resin, and then let it sit for about 5 minutes. And then use a hair dryer to go over the resin, pop all the bubbles, because there's going to be air bubbles on the surface. You've got apparently like 40 minutes of working time with this resin, because it takes a really long time to set, which is good, but it's also kind of a hassle if you're making a whole bunch of these. So yeah, you got about 40 minutes of working time, so it's plenty of time. And then once you get your resin all mixed up, they tell you to mix it for about 3 minutes. Okay, so you're going to mix it for 3 minutes. Let it sit for 5 minutes so that all the air bubbles come up to the top. Use your hair dryer to pop all the air bubbles. And then pour all of that into, I've been using a like a hair dye bottle, okay? So you pour all that into here, and then squeeze all that. So one end's going to be open on here. So this is all going to be open, so forget about all this. And then squeeze all that through down to here, okay? Be very careful not to drip any on the sides, because you're probably gonna shake a little bit as you're doing it. But squeeze it all out until it rises to the top of the Pringle lid. Okay, and then that's how you know how much that you've got enough in there. And then that's got to set for at least 8 hours. After 8 hours, it'll still be kind of jelly, but you can still peel it off. Peel off the Pringle lid. And what I find helps is if you use some 99% alcohol or isopropyl alcohol. Go all along here, so imagine that's on there again. So you go all along this edge, and then that'll kind of soak in. And what it does is it kind of dries up the hot glue a bit and the resin, because there's going to be overflow of resin on the outside of your tubes. Okay, so it's going to be kind of hot glue and resin, so it's going to be kind of a mess of crap there. But because it's only sat for 8 hours, it's going to be fairly soft still. So you just use your fingernails, let your fingernails get pretty long, and pick all that crap off of there, and it'll come off. Don't worry about it. And then again, let it set for like overnight or whatever, because this takes 72 hours for it to get that hard. Okay, it's still fairly soft after, like I said, after 8 hours. By 12 hours, it's still fairly soft still. And then by 24 hours, it's getting pretty close to being this hard. So that'll take care of one end. And then for the other end, what you're going to need to do is imagine your Pringle lid is on there again. And what do you have to do? Let's see. No, wait a minute. No, okay. So you're going to peel the Pringle lid off of this end. Okay, and then this one's going to have another Pringle lid on there. Okay, so that's going to be done the same way. So imagine this is fresh resin that you just peeled off, or you peeled off all of this. Okay, and then this is your mold again, all set to go. So you've glued it on, drilled the holes for your registration points, and then you've wrapped duct tape around there. Flip that over. Okay, now you're going to need to drill a hole in this end, and that hole has to accommodate for the size of the hole on your hair dye bottle. Okay, so that fits right in there, and there's little bits of water dripping out right now. Okay, so that's when you mix the proper amount of part A and B of your resin again. Okay, and then that gets all mixed the same way as I described. Let it sit for 5 minutes. Use your hair dryer, pour it into here, and then squirt all that. Try to keep it within this cavity, okay, so that you don't drip anything on the sides, you don't drip anything on here, on the inside of this tube, okay? And then gonna wait for that to fill up again to the height of your, it'd be nice if you could see what I'm doing, to the same height as the Pringle lid, and then stop, okay? So, because you're going to be able to see through everything here. So you're going to let it fill up to that height. And again, let that sit for at least 8 hours. If you can let it sit for a little bit longer, that's better, or that's good too. But I think it's easier to peel this off when it's still fairly soft. but don't peel it off any sooner than 8 hours. So maybe 10 hours or something, peel it off. Pick away all the excess crap, and then you've got one of these made, okay? Now for your rod, that was just one of these, okay? And it did have a little bit of an edge on here, which I used a belt sander and got it nice and smooth. This one I screwed up with because I was sanded off a little too much, and then this bottom piece ended up sinking in. So that was a dud. But the rest of them ended up really good. Because it used to have, I'm choking on something. It used to have a little bit of a lip on the edge here. You'll see when I provide the link. But yeah, so if you don't want these lids, you can throw those out, but you're going to end up with an opening on the bottom, okay? And then, so you wrap your window film around there, and then I'll show you what this is like inside here. So see how that's loose and it just drops through? So in order to eat up that space, you're supposed to have little O-rings around here, but I couldn't find any O-rings that were just the right size. And I didn't know how to order anything, and then, expect it to be one size and then it wouldn't fit or something. So I didn't want to do that. So I ended up buying some Velcro, just some of the soft adhesive Velcro, and I cut some strips and painted it red. Okay, so that's going to eat up enough space, and it's going to provide enough cushion for it to, like friction, for it to hold in place, just like that. Okay? And there you go. That's how you make one of these tubes. Canisters. So remember to mix your resin properly and let it sit long enough, and then pour it from one bottle to another bottle so that it gets all nice and clear. You're going to want to let it soak in hot water. It doesn't have to be like boiling hot water, but just like tap water, hot water, so that you avoid all these air bubbles, okay? Because that kind of looks crappy. And then they should be watertight, okay? So I could pour water into here. I've already tested it. And if you want it to look like the one from the movie, it's got this like liquid or whatever that it's soaking in, then you could fill it up through this hole and then just use some clear silicone or something, or hot glue, to close off that hole. And then it's just soaking in this fluid, okay? So yeah, that's how you make those. Like I said, everything was pretty reasonably priced. The supplier is out of stock on these 12-inch tubes. Okay, so hopefully they'll restock on everything. I probably bought them out because I ended up buying 6, but you would imagine that they would have a fair amount. And then, like I said, just cut off the ends here and here. Have your Pringle lids in place. Pour everything one after the other. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention was when you're mixing this art resin, if you're like me and you have to do 12 of these, it would be wise to mix or to prepare a lot of these canisters so that you can mix and pour multiples at a time. So if you wanted to do like 4 or 5 at a time, as opposed to just one at a time, then that would be wiser, because what's going to happen is when you mix the resin, you're going to end up with excess on the inside of your mixing cup, okay? So if you end up with excess, then it's better to have that excess amount after mixing 4 canisters worth as opposed to 1 canister worth, because you're gonna end up wasting a lot more resin if you're doing one at a time. So I kind of caught on to that, because I was doing 1 or 2 at a time, and then I was like, oh shoot, I don't know if I'm gonna have enough resin in order to do 12 bottles or 12 canisters, right? So I ended up doing about 5 or 6, mixed everything in a larger cup, so something bigger than this. Then I filled it up into here, squirted that into, for the bottoms, waited for that to set, drilled these holes, did it again, and then I ended up wasting less resin that way. Okay, but if you're only doing 1 or 2 of these, then just go nuts, have fun with it. And yeah, it's a pretty cool prop, reasonably affordable, and yeah, it looks great on display. So this ended up being a lot longer video than I wanted it to be, but yeah, if you have any more questions, just let me know, and I'll provide some links in the description and pictures of the items. Oh yeah, so make sure you use one of these bottles. Don't use one of these things, okay? Don't use that to squirt your resin. I know it's got a smaller hole, and that would be ideal, but the resin is gonna gum up this thing, and it'll never work properly after that. So yeah, no syringes. Alright, sorry, I forgot to mention that when you're done making these, so imagine the Pringle lid's still on there. So make sure you peel off the glue around here first, and then peel everything off from underneath here, because then you don't want to end up trapping, like peeling the edge off and then forgetting about this, because that'll maybe pull out this tube or put a lot of stress on there. So make sure you peel off the glue around here first, and then the outside. Now after that, you're gonna have a rough edge from that tube that you cut, okay? So it's gonna extend past here a little bit, and there's gonna be a rough edge here and here, okay? So what I did then was I used a Dremel tool and a bit like this one, so like a sander bit, and I went all along there and got it pretty smooth. Okay, so it's a little bit rough. That's a little rough patch there. And then so you end up with like this melted plastic kind of stuff, and then you can kind of pick away at that and chip away at it with your fingers. And then I went around with this polishing bit and all on the inside here, and then that just kind of got the edges fairly smooth. Like that's not too bad there. Okay, so that's as good as I could get it. And yeah, also these Pringle lids are a little bit concave, like they kind of, this is, the edge is higher, and then on the inside it kind of sinks a little bit, but that's really hard to notice with the final product, so I wouldn't worry about it. It doesn't have to be flat and flush. Alright, so yeah, I just wanted to add that. So take care and good luck with your project if you're making these.